I love hearing about web-based businesses that are built on top of premium category killer domain names. That's exactly today's interview in the airport parking business. If you love the strategies, the tactics, and the inspiration of these types of stories, stay tuned because we're going to learn all about the recently launched airportparking.com. 3 messages before today's show. First, if you're a domain name investor, don't you have unique legal needs that require domain name technical know-how and industry experience? That's why you need David Westlow of Wiley Rhine. Go search for David Westlow on Domain Sherpa, watch his interviews, and you can see for yourself that he is intelligent and articulate, can help you with buy-sell agreements, deal with website content issues and UDRP actions, and can even help you write your website terms and conditions. David Westlow is the lawyer to call for all your internet and intellectual property needs. See for yourself at newmediaip.com. Second, when you have questions about domain names, where should you go to ask them? The answer is dnforum.com. Not only is DN Forum the largest domain name forum in the world, but it's the best. You can learn about domain names in the industry, buy and sell domain names, talk about domain name news, and meet other domainers just like yourself. Register for a free DN Forum account and begin advancing your skills and knowledge today. And when you do sign up, send me a friend request so we can connect. My ID is Domain Sherpa. Finally, whenever I'm thinking of buying or selling a domain name, the very first place I go is estabat.com. Their service provides quick and comprehensive information about the valuation and the critical factors that you need to know about, like other extensions that are reserved, recent sales, search volume, and cost per click rates on search engines. And if you haven't tried their lead generator service for domains you want to sell, you're missing one of the most powerful tools around. Those are the reasons I pay for the service every month. Here's your program. Hey everyone, my name is Michael Seiger and I'm the publisher of DomainSherpa.com, the website where you come to learn how to become a successful domain name investor and entrepreneur directly from the experts. I love stories of technology-based businesses using killer domain names. Today's interview crossed my desk in mid-April 2013 as a press release, and after visiting the site, I knew I had to get the general manager on the show to talk about the details because it's a great domain name. It's a slick-looking website and technology, and it's actually generating revenue right out of the gate. I'd like to welcome to the show Raj Beri, General Manager of the online travel division, including the recently launched airportparking.com at oversea.net. Raj, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Mike. Excited to be here.
It's great to have you. I think most people don't even think about parking being an industry, but it's big money. You know, I remember when I used to commute into New York from Connecticut, major cities like New York have people commuting in by car from the suburbs to work 5 days a week, and they pay their monthly parking rates, usually a few $100s per month, sometimes in the high $100s per month. And every time I go to the airport with my family, I pay at least $100 to park on the airport parking lots. Do you know how big the airport parking industry is in terms of revenue?
Yeah, I mean, overall, again, some of the numbers are a little hard to break down, but overall parking as an industry in the U.S. is around between 9 and 10 billion a year. So it's a huge industry, and like you said, it is pretty much an afterthought to most people. It was an afterthought to me till I, started working in it, and I think the bulk of that is still what you'd consider off-street parking. When you go to your city parking or do your parking garages or your work parking garage. But I think airport parking in general is probably somewhere between 5 and 10% of that. And again, that's broken down into 2 categories, off airport and airport. And that's really where probably as far down I could probably drill right now. But I'd say, overall airport parking, somewhere between 5 and 10% of a $9 billion a year industry.
Wow. So that's, if my math is correct, that's like, that's like $900 million?
Yeah, could be. Yeah,
could
definitely.
be. Is big of. And you're saying that you deal only in the offline or the off airport parking lots.
Mhm.
But even the people like myself who park, who have their 3 kids in tow and all the luggage, and they want to park as close to the airport
Yeah,
terminal as possible, I could potentially be a customer if
of
you
course.
could convince me that it's just as convenient, it's faster, it's safer, whatever all the off airport parking
Yeah,
lots.
and the reality is, more and more, especially over the last 2 to 3 years, there's a larger percentage of people who are booking off airport than on airport, and it comes down to economics and that the convenience factor has now made a lot more sense. Whether it's for drop off at the airport or even drop your car off at the airport, a valet comes, picks up your car, you just take out your luggage, you call them when you land, and you get dropped back off. There's the barriers that used to be there, whether they're technology barriers or convenience barriers, and definitely price point is the big thing. Like you said, $30 a day in LA and New York for daily parking versus $9-10 a day for off airport with a valet shuttle and I think that's why the industry has grown over the last few years, as that price point gap is there and the convenience factor has kind of closed any sort of other gaps.
Yeah, definitely. So I mentioned in the intro that we're going to talk about airportparking.com. I'm going to ask
Yes.
you about the acquisition of that domain name later in the show, but it's not the only website that Oversea owns and operates in the airport parking industry. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. So we have, how we got into this game was actually, before my time even. I think it was 2010. We had acquired About Airport Parking, and that was our flagship property. And that really had been a business that had been around for a few years, had deep relationships with all the parking lot operators throughout the U.S. So if you think of, all the major airports in the U.S. and all the different parking lot operators are there. There's everyone from big players like Parking Spot and Park and Fly to the mom and pops, family owned people that just own one lot. And so those relationships were built kind of over the years. When we acquired it in 2010, we expanded on that. But that was our first foray into airport parking. And really what, the success of that and how it's kind of taken off, led to us potentially doing other things like airport parking, having those assets and that business model to try to replicate with, like you said, a killer domain name.
Yeah. And were you at Oversea when they acquired about airportparking.com?
I was not. No, that was probably about I'd probably say close to a year and a half to two before I joined. And when I joined was when we were thinking about what else we could potentially do in parking to leverage, the fact that we had these assets. It was a profitable business, but if we really wanted to get more traffic and more visibility, was there a domain name out there that we could do that with?
Yeah. So if I had access to your Google Analytics account or whatever analytics you use on
Sure.
at Oversea, how many visitors and page views would I see displayed per month on about airportparking.com?
Yeah,
what was
so I
originally
think
the flagship.
Yeah, so I think we're in definitely in the few hundred thousand, so over 200,000, under a million kind of a month that we see. And it's very like parking, I've been in travel for a while. It's a very seasonal business.
Yeah.
So, you get, the summer months, the spring break months, and then, November, December as being very peak months. That's when people are actually traveling. So, you will see, twice as much traffic in those months as you might see in a January, which tends to be a low month. But yeah, we're talking, a few 100,000 visitors a month. We tend to have very loyal repeat visitors. So we've got about, a large portion, close to half of our traffic is repeat visitors. And then we've got traffic coming in from organic and as well as paid marketing.
Gotcha. And when you came aboard at Oversea and you realized that you had airportparking.com as an asset to take advantage of, and we'll talk more about that, what magnitude did you see in terms of visitors on that domain name before it was developed?
It was, when we acquired it, the person running it wasn't a full business, but it was more than a parked page.
Okay.
So it did have a little bit, but, it was mainly, like you said, type in traffic or type O traffic or people. It wasn't getting a lot of juice from, if you went to Google and typed in airport parking, it would not appear.
Yeah.
But if you typed in airport parking without a space, it would, obviously appear. So it was actually much less than you would think. Not a lot of traffic in there. But again, when I came on board, and again, I think strategically the name was acquired, shortly after the About Airport Parking deal went through, both from, potentially a strategic standpoint, but also just because, having done our due diligence in that industry, we realized, hey, this is a killer domain name.
Yeah.
Even if we don't build it out, it'll have some value, obviously. And, when I came on board, that's really when we looked at it and said, hey, you know what, let's try and do this.
Yeah. So it was mainly, before you started developing it, it was mainly a domain asset. It had a website up, but it wasn't authoritative in Google's eyes, so it didn't rank very well. And it had maybe some organic traffic and maybe some type-ins, but there wasn't a lot of traffic. Maybe if you had to guess, like 1,000 visitors a month, definitely.
If that, I'd say, maybe 1,000,
All right.
1,500.
And so most people don't own or have access to a premium category killer domain name like airport parking. Before you actually looked at the analytics of the domain name, before you developed it, and as you were thinking about developing, what was your impression of the organic traffic? Did you think that it was higher than you anticipated? Not coming from the domain space, but coming from the online space. And we're going to talk more about your background. Were you impressed or not impressed with how much type-in traffic was coming to the domain?
You know what? Having not been in the parking space, I was probably expecting there to be probably more organic traffic than was actually showing up just through the domain name itself. So I wasn't that impressed with the kind of organic traffic. But again, like you said, I definitely saw some alarm bells going off in my head and some money signs about how we could potentially make this into a business.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to talk about how you made it into a business, but I'd like to finish the introduction with what's the total revenue? So if we were to look at airportparking.com and aboutairportparking.com together as one package, what's the total revenue generated per year from?
Got it. And yeah, sure. And again, I probably can't give full specifics, but I'll say, we make over, probably over $1 million, under 10 million in revenue. And we are very, again, without getting specifics, we've been profitable since, we've started. So the margins are nice, and it's a growing business for us. So if you look at parking as a general, over the last few years, parking as a general has been it's a fairly mature business, about 2 to 3% growth. But what you're seeing is a large portion of that is moving from on airport parking to off airport parking. So it's a revenue shift in the mix. And we're, capturing that fairly well with, much higher than the industry growth in terms of how we're growing, both from a revenue and a profit perspective.
Yeah, great. And I appreciate you sharing that information, Raj. And it's not that I ask because I think people are going to say, man, that's a great industry, a niche industry that I didn't realize. I'm going to go out and buy some airport parking names because, let's be honest, you got it locked up. You got a great domain at aboutairportparking.com, and you own the #1 keyword-rich domain name that defines the industry. So anything that anybody's going to go get is going to be, a second or third tier. And my main point for that is I want people to understand when they think about developing out a lead generation business or they're thinking about a content business, look at the size of the industry and then try and figure out what percentage you think you can get, what percentage the niche is that you're going after. And then, in your case, knowing that you're over $1 million, you're less than $10 million, we'll figure out what kind of expenses you have, and people can do their own math and try and figure it out. But that gives people an idea. Well, if I invest heavily in buying a category defining domain name that goes across this industry size and I go after it, I might be able to generate something similar, and we'll figure out all the details involved in that.
Definitely. And like you said, I think it's a growing industry, especially on the off-airport side. And also as, I think, we can get into more detail, but right now the main thing is the airport lots really don't participate a lot in third-party marketing for beyond. They like to keep it a closed system. But, potentially in the next year to 2 years, that's going to change. And they will start pouring marketing money into third parties. So we like to think of ourselves as, the Travelocity or Priceline of airport parking, where we aggregate all of these players. And as maybe some of these doors open and you're able to work with the airports too, that's, obviously a very large potential for business as well.
So when you say it's closed right now, but it may be opening over the next few years, is that the on-airport parking lots that are closed?
Yeah, so the on-airport parking lots tend not to work with aggregators like us or advertising outside of their own direct advertising So they don't tend to work with third parties that way right
Right.
now.
Gotcha. All right. And I'm going to ask you why the industry is changing for that. So we're going to dig into how you developed airportparking.com, how you're monetizing it. But I always like to go back in time and figure out how people arrived at their current position, Raj. I see on your LinkedIn profile that you were an aerospace engineer by education. Digital media is pretty far from aerospace
Yes.
engineering, isn't it?
Yes, I'd like to say I was a wee lad growing up and was dreaming about airport parking and how to make money off of it, but that wasn't the case. Yeah, you're right. So I graduated with technically I could call myself a rocket scientist. I'm sure that impressed all the ladies, not really, but I realized fairly quickly that that really wasn't where my passions were, and I maybe dabbled in there for about 6 months in the aerospace industry or so, but really quickly moved to more just general product design. So I worked in product design for about 5 years as a product design consulting firm where we worked with companies, designing everything from consumer products to digital media players to things like that. But I quickly, as I was doing that, I was also kind of working on the side as in journalism actually, and doing some freelance journalism for some magazines. And I realized media was kind of really interesting to me, but more the business side of it. And so at that point, I decided, hey, you know what, I'm going to go back to school, brush up on my business knowledge a little bit. And so I went back to business school and with the goal of coming out and working in online media. And so, I've done that in various incarnations over the years, starting out as in consulting, then working in online publishing. But over the last 4 years or so, I've been in online travel. I kind of, not on purpose got into it. It just was a good opportunity at a startup type environment. And I ended up really enjoying the space. And so I worked at a company that was acquired by Travelocity, and it was all about, online travel and building online travel communities. And did that for a few years and found my way back to Los Angeles and was working on my own travel ideas. And then I met up with Oversea, and they were really trying to grow their verticals, which we can talk about a little bit more, but one of them was travel. And with the combination of some of the assets they had, whether it's domain names, traffic, users, and then what they wanted to do in terms of really building out these verticals, it was a compelling opportunity. And so I found myself here pretty much about a year or so ago, coming to run the travel properties here, which include our parking properties, but also include, comparison travel sites, like similar to like a Kayak or a TripAdvisor, where you can search for flights, cars, and hotels, as well as we're incubating some new and exciting things both on websites and mobile that we're going to be launching with this year as well. So and that's really how I kind of stumbled into parking. And I hadn't worked in the industry before. I'd worked in travel and I'd worked in e-commerce, but not the specific niche. And I think it's a very fascinating and like you said, it's not a $50 billion industry. But hey, you know what? I'd rather be a number one or a number two player in an $800 million industry than a number 10 player in a $50 billion
Yeah,
industry.
definitely. And you brought up incubating and testing new ideas, and I remember from the pre-interview conversation, you told me about the way you do that, and I had never heard of anybody doing it that way before. So I'm going to, if we have enough time, I'm going to try and insert that at the end of this interview for anybody that's watching. They're going to really be impressed with the way you do that. So when I looked at your resume, I saw that you worked at many companies doing digital media, such as the Monitor Group, McGraw-Hill doing media, iGo, which was the division of Travelocity, and now Oversea with their online travel division. What's been the most challenging digital media position that you've held over the years, and why was it so challenging?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably say, right now the one I'm in, and that's for two. One, the main reason is it's really we're trying to do a couple of things. We have some, really good mature properties that get a very good traffic, are well known in their industry, and we get a lot of users and subscribers. But I think the challenging piece is we want to keep those going and grow them, but at the same time realizing, hey, we've got to start doing new things. We've got to, find some other niches, some other areas. I think the challenging part is, hey, how do you you weigh those priorities? How do you, keep the ones that are really churning along going, but at the same time dedicate enough time to incubating some of these other properties like airportparking.com and some of the other ones. So
Yeah.
more from a operational standpoint, how do you, allocate resources and your time to do that has been probably my most challenging, because at my other roles, it was pretty clear it was either one or the other. It was, hey, here's a property, it's making 10 million a year, grow it to 12 million and 15 million a year, or hey, here's a startup, let's just build it and see what happens. But here, having both is it's very exciting, but it's also challenging because you have those dual kind of dual type properties that are kind of on different paths.
Yeah, definitely. Managing at different levels of the maturity cycle. What's the one thread that goes between all the digital media businesses that you've worked with that now having that knowledge makes you more successful in your current position?
Yes. So this is probably things I probably failed at earlier in my career, is focus. It's, early on when I, started in the industry, I would want to do, hey, there's 10 things I can do, and I would try to do them all, and I would do them all really bad. I think the key here is like picking your battles. And it's really like, hey, if the focus is on growing airport parking and optimizing the conversion on the site, that's what we're going to focus on. We're not going to focus on, or maybe two things at most. And as opposed to, we could do that as well as launch into mobile on this, and as well as trying to increase our reviews and increase X. So I think it's really, it has to start with, with me and making sure that the team and I are working together to understand, hey, there are 10 things we could be doing. We're only going to do these 3. If it doesn't further these 3 things along, it doesn't fall into our priority list. And I think that's something, honestly, through failing at doing that over the, a couple times in my career, I've realized is just, you got to just prioritize and just go with it and say, hey, you know what? We'll get to these other things later.
Yeah. And, I try and do the same thing. I find it also, if I count them on my hand and there's more than like a handful minus a finger, there's too many things, and it is distracting for me as well. And the way I prioritize all those things that I could work on is by revenue. What's the potential revenue of it? Is that the way you prioritize your main objectives?
I think it's,
as well?
I mean, if I look at it from I'd say there's a 3-prong kind of scorecard, we try to have here. One is it increasing, revenue? The other one is it increasing traffic or number of users that are using our properties? And then the third thing would be engagement. And so, yes, there are times in the cycle that we'll prioritize, hey, for example, we may prioritize, hey, it's in an order, it'll be revenue, then traffic, and then engagement. But I think that's the 3-prong lens of, hey, how do we attract as many visitors as we can to the site? Once they're here, how do we keep them here? So how do we engage them? And then the third thing is, hey, how do we monetize them? So it's always, hey, how do we attract them? How do we engage them? How do we convert them? So if something doesn't fall into those 3 categories, it's not really on our roadmap.
Yeah. And you don't necessarily define engagement as a conversion from a visitor to somebody who fills out a form that then you can monetize. Are you looking at engagement more broadly?
Yeah, for example, for airport parking, we're looking at things like lifetime value of a customer, repeat visits of a user. Obviously, repeat conversions is a big metric as well, but it's almost like, hey, cohort analysis of, this person joined or logged in the first 6 months of the year. What is their transactions looking like over the course of the year, and making sure that, hey, we expect certain attrition and certain people not to come back, but making sure that our numbers are healthy enough so that we're getting enough repeat conversions from users. Because, you know what, I don't want to acquire users more than once. Ideally, I want to acquire them once and have them come back to the site on their own. And I think that's where it dives into the engagement piece of it, whether it's, hey, do we have loyalty programs? Do we have other things that make it compelling for a user to choose us? When in essence, airport parking, like flights to an extent, is a commodity industry. When you go searching for airport parking, you're searching for price, and you're searching for convenience and some other factors. And there's really not a lot of brand affinity. But if you like a parking lot, you'll keep going there. But so for us, it's the challenges, similar to what flights, people look for flights is, hey, does it get me there on the times I want, and is it within my budget? Airport parking is very similar. So realizing that you're going to have some other incentives for users, whether they're features on the site that make it, easier for them to find what they want, or if there's certain incentives to have them to keep coming back.
Yeah, definitely. So I have to admit that I didn't know much about oversea.net and how Oversea is structured
Yeah.
with respect to the revenue generating operations. How does airportparking.com fit into the larger business and then into oversea.net?
Definitely. So, like I mentioned, Oversea, the big part of the bigger part of the business for many years and still is obviously the domain business, which we all know.
And
And
that's
then they have,
domainsponsor.com, the
yeah,
monetization platform,
definitely.
primarily.
And then, but there's been a big push over the last, couple of years, and especially over the last year, to really grow the vertical markets or the owned and operated consumer side of the business. And really in there's three verticals: travel, which is one of them. Then there's retail, which is retail comparison sites, as well as coupon sites and rebate type sites as well. That's a big part of the portfolio. And then there's the consumer finance vertical, which is sites like creditcards.org, et cetera, that are also about helping people find the right credit card, et cetera. The area that I'm responsible for is travel, and like I said, travel has, I'd say, probably now three components. One is comparison travel properties, two of which are Low Fares and Fare Spotter, which we've had for years. And those are all about helping people find flights, hotels, and cars. And then we don't do the booking on our sites, but we help them find the best prices and routes on other sites. And that's a large portion of our business. And then the e-commerce piece right now is we're really focusing on niche e-commerce, and parking is really where we kind of hang our hat on with that. And it's the About Airport Parking and Airport Parking are the big players in there, both consumer web as well as mobile. And then the third piece, which I briefly mentioned, is we are looking at incubating a few other ideas that are much more on the consumer side as well, where they're less about lead gen and things. They're more about engagement in that model, and that one's a little bit more nascent. We are probably rolling out a new site within the next couple of months as our flagship for that part of the business. But I'd say Airport Parking and About Airport Parking are really the only two e-commerce sites that Oversea has. So if you're looking at across all their portfolio of businesses, whether it's travel, consumer finance, or retail, those are really our only e-commerce sites.
And when you say e-commerce, you mean people can actually place
Well,
an order
yeah.
directly through you and transact and make a reservation, and you take money.
Yes, exactly. And the other ones are more, sites where we are working more with content, or we help people go to other sites that are our partners, and they may book on those sites.
Gotcha. All right. So you had mentioned airportparking.com was acquired before you came on, after the acquisition of the website about airportparking.com.
Yeah.
And do you remember what the cost was? Do you know what the cost was for airportparking.com, and are you at liberty to say that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, probably not give full specifics, but it wasn't necessarily cheap. It was a six-figure price we paid for airportparking.com, and it was what we thought was a good fair price for it, and one that we thought hey, if we build this out, it'll be great, and if we don't, like you said, the value of the name itself we felt was worth it. So there was kind of a dual approach to acquiring that name.
Okay. So I want to understand the business model. So I went to airportparking.com.
Yes.
You say it right there on the website. Quote, we show you all of the available off-airport parking options at your departure airport, including prices, distance and to the terminal, shuttle bus frequency, services offered, and real customer reviews.
Yep.
You choose the best airport parking lot for you and reserve your spot with a small refundable deposit to lock in your discounted price. We transmit your information to the parking lot so they can be prepared for your arrival. You bring a copy of your reservation confirmation to the lot to ensure credit for your prepayment deposit. So
Yes.
are you taking the entire So it sounds like you're not taking the entire fee. Like if I go to SeaTac
Yeah.
and I want to pay $100 to park off
Yeah.
lot for off airport for a week, you're not taking my full $100. You're taking a deposit.
Yes, that's correct. And really, so how it works is we take the deposit, and then because the nature of airport parking, as you probably know, is you go in when you book it online and you're putting in times and dates, and the times especially are probably a little bit approximate. You don't,
Right.
your flight may be late, something may happen. So really, what we're doing is reserving that spot. We're taking a deposit, and then you settle up what the actual amount is, with that credit card when you leave, when you check out of there. And the way, the business model, like you said, it's fairly straightforward. We, between airportparking.com and aboutairportparking.com, we work with probably, the largest collection of off-airport parking lots in the industry, in the U.S. with all the major airports. And we work with them in a way that we're, another marketing vehicle for them. And they value us because of our user base and our reach can get to more customers than they can. And we work with them on a commission or a flat fee kind of deposit basis for each, reservation taken there. And so we work very closely with our partners, for example, if they're the larger franchise partners, to see ways that, hey, how can we help you, get more customers through our channel? What's going to make it easier for you to, as you check them in through the process? We introduced mobile at some point with half our partners just to, facilitate some of the on-the-go booking that people are doing and on-the-go check-in without having to print something out.
Right.
And then the way that we work it the same way with some of the smaller lots is that a lot of them before working with partners like us didn't necessarily have an online booking system.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of them are, hey, we and other partners like us are their online transaction system. So you kind of have
That's pretty cool to be able to put them online and give them a transaction system.
Yeah, you definitely run the gamut of technology sophistication between partners, and I think having to work with everyone is definitely been something we've done over the years. And I think we basically work with the lot owners, our customer service teams on a daily basis, and working with them. And we work with things like, hey, if airports are closed, we get calls, we try to book them at another airport, transfer their reservation. So yeah, there's a fair bit of I'd say high. It is fairly high touch as well because of the nature of the business, as opposed to some of the other stuff that we had done before, which was more we didn't necessarily need customer service and things like that.
Well, that's good to note. I'm just making a note of the customer service because I want to come back to that. So check my assumptions, Raj. I would think that if I was a lot owner,
yes,
next to LAX, let's say, I'm going to get a majority of my customers pulling into the lot because I got a big sign over the lot that says $20 a day, immediate service to the airport. And most people that are driving to the airport are either going to look for off-airport parking or they're just going to pull into parking, and that's going to fill, maybe half my lot. Do you know roughly how these smaller lots, I say smaller, not chain lots across the United States, operate, and what's their capacity? What's their how full are they?
Yeah, I mean, we one thing that is surprising to the first part of your question is, and this is surprising to me, is I always think of airport parking as, hey, this is one of the last things I think about.
Right.
Almost like, hey, I printed my boarding pass, let me figure this out. But surprisingly, and kind of some nuggets from our data is that the average, before flight departure length that people are booking is about 4 days, which is very surprising. We're seeing roughly half of our reservations coming in that 3 to 4 day range before people depart. Obviously, we get a lot of the day of departure as well, but there's people booking. It's interesting going into our system. You've got people booking now for like Thanksgiving of this year.
Wow! And do parking lots fill up? Do they need to book that early?
Well, definitely. This is my recommendation to you and other people who go through this. Anytime around holidays, whether it's July 4th, Memorial Day, Thanksgiving, spring break, you definitely want to park because our data shows we sell out on holiday weeks. We sell out our big primary markets on the Monday or Tuesday of that week.
Wow.
And part of it is the inventory they release to online partners like us. But yeah, they sell out very, very fast, and then especially in the summer travel season. So
So if I'm
I
a
usually.
lot owner, Raj,
Yep.
and I have 100 spots that I want to fill, I'm gonna maybe keep 50 for me, and then I'm gonna open up 50 to you to try and sell.
Yeah, it varies. And again, I probably don't know for each one, but I would say, yeah, roughly, the ones that have their own channels, usually this is all plugged into some sort of central reservation system anyways, and
Right.
they kind of say, okay, yeah, for third parties we'll do X because, we're giving away some deposit or commission. And
Right.
I think over time they know what their own marketing efforts get them, and they supplement that with third party marketing like us. And I think some of the things we're able to offer is a reach because you may not want to go to a specific franchise or lot because you may just be looking for a specific feature like, hey, I want valet parking or I want covered parking
Hmm.
less than a mile from the airport.
Right.
And I think our system and sites like airportparking.com can do that probably as well as most sites out there in terms of the way that you can filter and get users
Hmm.
who may not have decided exactly where they want to park yet.
Right.
If people go to a specific lot, it might be like, hey, I found them on Google or I've been there before. So
Yep.
for our lots, it's like, hey, not only the repeat users, but also the new users. And I think one thing they value is we handle the customer service.
Right.
So for a lot of them, they don't necessarily have a big customer service team, but if there's a problem with someone's reservation at one of our lots, they're talking to us. They're not talking to the lots, and then we'll work it out with the lots. And I think the lots really value that.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. So I went on to airportparking.com. I requested a 5-day parking lot close to LAX. It came up at
Yes.
$16 a day, so the total came out to $95. And it had $16 of that as a deposit fee that I needed to pay for. So
Yes.
that $16 goes to
Yes.
Oversee.
Yeah. So we work with, again, it's on a case by case basis, but
Uh-huh.
we either work with something like a deposit fee, which is whatever the deposit is, or a percentage of the overall amount. And really that's standard in kind of the aggregator in the parking industry is you're taking some sort of, whether it's first day of or some sort of percentage off the top. And again, it varies by lot and varies by partner that we work with.
Sure. So in this case, is it safe to say it was about 15% commission?
Probably, yeah. That
Okay.
seems about
So
right.
basically, for that 15% that you're taking immediately as somebody books, you're reserving that spot for them. So you've built this online system that reserves the spot. You do the customer service. You communicate with the lot to make sure that they know that one of the spots that they've assigned to you is now taken. And anything else that you do
Yeah, I mean, I
for
think
that
one of the
transaction
things,
fee?
yeah, for the lot owners, what's really valuable is we have a admin system, an administrative system that we built that they can just log into. They can change pricing. They
Nice.
can put in things like that, and they can view how many reservations they have and volume they have. So
Yeah.
it's more of like we've created this self-serve platform. So it's pretty transparent to the lots. Like, hey, I can check what my volume was last week versus this week, and I can go in. Hey, if I have a new lot or some new pricing, I can go and update that. And I think that's really how you can scale is so that you provide that so that it's not just all on us to update all that all the time.
Right.
But yeah, overall, I think the lots have visibility into that, and then they also are able to work with us on other marketing. One of the things is we do a lot of email marketing. We have a pretty big, substantial hundreds of thousands of email users that we will work with lots to say, hey, do you want to get in front of these users? Do you want us to work do you have something specific around the time of year that you want to push? And we'll help them do that as well. Because again, they're not necessarily, we only make money when they make money. It's
Right.
it's a commission driven business. So, it's a very kind of, symbiotic relationship that way that we work with these lots. And I think, we kind of try to meet with them and talk to them very often so that we understand what their biggest issues are, where they'd like to see improvements and kind of go from there.
How do you talk to your customers? How do you talk to the hundreds of different individual mom and pop lot owners that you have a relationship, relationships with, and gather information such that it's usable?
Yeah, so I guess there's like, when I think of our customers, I think of two. So we talk to our lots, and it's mainly our great customer service team that, we have a customer service director who works, pretty much daily with the lots, has been with the business for a long time. And then we have customer service reps, and they are, assigned specific lots that they will work with. And I think that's, done basically on a daily or a weekly basis. And then we meet on a weekly basis to see what the major issues or major opportunities are with the lots, and we try to build that into our product pipeline. And I think, the other customers we have are obviously the users, and we do talk to them as well. So we do, after someone's booked, we contact them to see how their experience went. We get a lot of reviews from them. We get a lot of feedback from them. We probably have the largest collection of airport parking reviews in the industry, and that's something that's we value a lot. Real people giving input to the lots on what works and what doesn't. But we're also able to survey them and ask them about our user experience on our site, what we could do better, what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I think through both those mechanisms, we talk to, I'd say, both our advertising, and our lot partners, as well as to our customers.
I want to come back and ask you about that feedback that you have, because it is an enormous cache of authoritative content that relates directly to the airports. But first, I want to understand how many customer service reps do you have, let's say, working on the airport parking businesses?
I think it's it varies, but probably between 5 and 8 or so.
Okay, so let's say that you have 8 customer service reps.
Yep.
And you want to try and understand what all those lots are saying to the customer service reps, and then when you get together with them on a weekly or biweekly basis or whatever it is, to try and boil up the most important factors. Let's say that you're hearing from one lot in the Southwest and one lot from the Northeast that the online system just isn't working. How do you gather that input and have it all feed up in such a way that it's not just the loudest squeaky wheel customer, that it's actually, the things that you should be focused on?
Definitely. And I think, obviously we have, customer service systems, CRMs that, we input a lot of this data into. So we get everything from, call volume to drop calls to how long calls were, but also contextual information on each call about what the issue was, what it was. And then, our customer service and us can roll that up and filter that up on a weekly basis to see, like, hey, a lot of this was on overbooking and this was on that. And so again, it's like you said, to scale, it's beyond the point of, just us anecdotally doing this. It's kind of in a system. We're able to filter, to track it, to see that it's actionable data and not just anecdotal, and then use that to roll into our product and our priority meetings to see, hey, this is what we need to be doing. We had 30% of customers on this week about this, or even things like, hey, we're having, we need to focus on getting more lots in these areas because of, these kind of issues we're having, et cetera. So yeah, we're pretty data driven, and everything is kind of in a system that we're able to kind of carve out data in any different way that we want.
What CRM system do you use that allows you to track it and categorize it?
Yeah, I think, again, we've built our own in-house admin system that we do that with, but we do work with more on the call basis. We work with what's it called, 8x8, I believe, or contactual that help us pull data on our customer service calls and call time and things like that. But then we have our own admin system where the reps go into and log in stuff, and so it appears on our main dashboards.
That makes sense. All right. So we understand how you talk to the customers, how you gather that information, how you boil it up to the most important issues. So let's talk about airportparking.com.
Yes.
What are the new features that make airportparking.com interesting and useful to people who need parking and to parking lot owners that you didn't have on aboutairportparking.com?
Got it. And I think the main thing is, when we were trying to figure out to launch airportparking.com, we kind of just said, hey, this is our opportunity to start from scratch and build a site that we think, is reflective of what kind of today's user experience expectations are. So I think if you look at them both, you'll see that, they're both very good, but they're very different. And airportparking.com is is much more of what I'd say, a web 2.0 or 3.0 site, both from how it's laid out, whether it has tones of like Pinterest and things like that in terms of how each of the lot information is presented to you, whether it's the big thing is it was built with responsive design, so that no matter if you're looking at it, on your laptop, on your mobile phone, or on your tablet, it's going to adjust to your screen size. While about airportparking.com, we have a mobile app, but right now it isn't fully web optimized that way. So we realize that, hey, in the future, a lot of these bookings are going to be migrating to mobile. How do we get ahead of that? Right. And then some of the other things are just some of the filtering and things that we were doing on About Airport Parking, kind of, bringing that over to airportparking.com, but allowing for some other things as well, whether it's, how close to gas stations or, valet versus unvalet, kind of tweaking the filters. So I'd say that, if I was looking at it, I'd say airportparking.com is definitely much more modern and contemporary in its look and its feel, and that it's trying to address not only where we think the business is now, but we're allowing us flexibility for when, while mobile is not a huge percentage of airport parking bookings right now, it's growing. It's still very small, but it's growing much faster than desktop is. And we realize that, in a year, 18 months, 2 years time, as owners as well as the consumers get more comfortable transacting on mobile, we need to have an experience that does that.
So if I strip away, Raj, all of the CSS and I make just the what's on the screen on airportparking.com and about airportparking.com. They're both ugly, but you dig down and you're looking at the different options. Am I actually going to see any different content or functionality on airport parking than I will on about airport parking? If you strip away all the GUI, the jazzy, the snazzy, Ajaxy sort of stuff, what do I see differently?
Yeah, so we've changed the checkout process. We've tried to make it a little bit more streamlined. The data is showing that it is. We're definitely getting more people into the checkout process than we have before. So what you'll see is
at the new system than the old system.
Yeah, definitely seeing like less of a bounce rate, things like that. So we're very encouraged. I mean, one thing is we're treating them like two different beasts to begin with, because About Airport Parking has been around a while. It has a lot of repeat users. While with airportparking.com, we're getting a lot of first-time users, right, as we build up the site. So obviously the conversions and things like that, as we build into repeat users, will grow. But one of the things we've been very careful and very deliberate to do is to not have the same content. And when I say content, I mean everything from overviews to everything from like the content describing each of the lots to even the review content on both sites. And from a practical standpoint, that's for, so that we can distinguish the sites in search engines. So, when we launched airportparking.com, we had no reviews. So what we said is we're going to include the reviews from About Airport Parking, but we are going to no index those. So Google does not search those or crawl those because we don't want to be penalized.
Right.
And then over the last month or two, we started to build up the reviews on airportparking.com. So at some point we're just building that cache up, but we needed to seed the content. Same goes with, we've created original content around each airport and around each lot in airportparking.com. We want them to each have their own identity. While the back-end system and the lots may be the same, it's our thinking that these need to be kind of two separate sites that potentially may appeal to different users as well. The airportparking.com site I see is potentially appearing to more of a younger user base than the About Airport Parking site, just because of how it's designed, how it's tablet and mobile friendly. So realizing that, hey, what a 28-year-old wants is different than what a 64-year-old wants, both in terms of user experience and how they want it, how they're comfortable transacting on a site, and trying to build that into our product.
So you can actually have two different web properties, and you can do the marketing for About Airport Parking to target people on Facebook that are, over 40, let's say, whereas you can target using younger channels like Facebook demographic targeting or only mobile targeting to people who are more mobile friendly, more mobile forward.
And we're, some of the stuff we've done, like, for example, on airportparking.com, we deliberately decided to integrate with, Apple Passbook when the iPhone 5 came out, because we think that, that caters to a certain demographic, and that's going to be, useful for people who have iPhones and who are used to, checking in, swiping, getting push alerts and things like that. And the same thing for making it mobile optimized is, while we have a mobile app, we realize that, mobile web is very big. And to take advantage of our search engine optimization, it's very important to have a mobile web presence with airportparking.com. I think the biggest other thing would be, like you said, how and potentially where we market. Like to the lots, they're happy when we get a customer. It doesn't really matter who that customer is and what their demographics are. But if we eventually want airport parking to be our flagship property, which down the road I think we do because of the domain name and how it resonates, is capturing a different segment of users is important to us.
Right. It's interesting. When I started publishing back in 2000, I thought, I'm going to put all of my eggs in one basket. I'm going to focus on this one site. I'm going to build it into the biggest site possible. And it's only over the past, couple of years that I realized, you don't have to put all your eggs in that one basket. If you don't put your eggs in the second and third basket, somebody else is going to buy those premium domain names, and they're going to use the advantage of the exact match domain, or be more inspired to develop it out, and then I'm going to have more competition. Like yourself, if you own airportparking.com and About Airport Parking, now you've taken potentially 2 of the top 10 spots on the first page of Google, and you've knocked out 10% of your competition. So, it's an interesting view to develop more than one property, and I didn't even think about how you could market the 2 properties differently to different demographics, and you may find that one of the demographics works better internationally, or one of them works better with women over men, or what have you.
Yeah, and it's also, and from a paid marketing perspective too, we've had experience with that at Oversea as well, with having 2 comparison travel sites, and we find that the sum of the parts is greater than just having one, and you're able to, like you said, get visibility on searches twice, and you'll convert on one of those, and like you said, when we entered the market with airportparking.com, this year, over the last few months, we have grabbed a lot of market share from a paid marketing perspective and have pushed down a lot of our competitors. So it is worth it from that standpoint for us as well.
Yeah. Well, and I like the way you took your assets, the customer feedback, the reviews that you have on About Airport Parking, and you used them on airportparking.com to build up a cache, but you labeled them as no index. So you don't want to take advantage of duplicate. You don't want to show Google that you're trying to duplicate content for the sheer purpose of trying to rank higher. You're being upfront with them on that. How do you, with Google getting into reviews in every single online business, it seems, they're trying to disintermediate all of the intermediaries like yourself, who are the business owners and Google. You're standing between them saying, find us, we'll give you some great information that will then route you to a business. How do you make sure that Google doesn't come on and steal your reviews and just, index them like they index everything else on the web and cut you out?
Exactly. No, I mean, obviously we get a lot of traffic from, us showing up when people are typing in, LAX, this lot parking review. And, we want that traffic, but obviously we're not making available we're just making available a certain snippet to Google, and that's what they can see. Obviously our content is a big asset of ours, and down the road, would we be open to having our content appear in more rich form on other sites? Yes, but I think strategically it would have to make sense. My previous role at Travelocity, the website we had over 2 million reviews, and we worked with Google to say, yes, we are going to allow you to have rich snippets of our reviews in exchange for link backs, but there were certain conditions around that. And I think, we probably, we're open. Again, we want people to come to the site. We think our reviews are very valuable. I think the difference between us and not only just Google, but everyone else is, yes, that content is there. I think the defensible aspect of the business, when I'm really looking at it, is, yes, the amount of review content we have, but also just, it's very hard to build up relationships with all these lots to do anything beyond just showing the content. So,
That's
to
your
actually
barrier
get,
to entry, because
yeah,
Google's not sending people out to go talk to every single airport lot there is.
yeah, and they wouldn't want to. And again, I think
Yeah.
so. I think our, the initial sales effort and the customer service efforts, that, it's pretty much there's established players in the game, and unless you want to go to, somewhere in Minnesota and talk to every lot and put the sales effort into doing that, it's going to be very hard
Yeah.
for you to go in and repeat that. Similar to, Groupon's premise of, hey, we've got 3,500 people on the ground talking to local merchants. Well, we're talking to local lots, and we're able to work with them, and we have relationships with them, and we're making sure that's our most prized and valued thing that in our business is those relationships.
Definitely. How much of the traffic that comes to airportparking.com or about
Mhm.
airport parking is paid versus organic?
Yeah, and it's actually, it's a good mix. We've got about, I'd say, under half of our traffic is paid. Half of it is either organic or repeat or direct users. So I'd say, between, 30 to 50% is potentially paid, and then the rest is people coming in through just organic searches or people coming directly in through the site. We actually have about 40% of our visitors, or 35 to 40% of our visitors are repeat visitors,
Hmm.
and a lot of that is just direct traffic
Wow.
coming back to the site.
How much do you
So
pay per click to get a consumer to your website?
yeah, I mean, and again, without going into full details, I'm just being honest here. It depends on the market.
Yeah.
Getting York and JFK and LaGuardia is much more expensive than maybe getting one in a secondary market like
Definitely.
Charlotte or something. But yeah, you can get clicks into definitely the dollar plus range, and you could have some that are below that. But
Yep.
it's not cheap, and it's a combination of paying for it, but also having as working with some paid marketing. Do you have good traction from people who are seeing those ads? Are they coming to the site? Google values that. For us, it paid is a profitable marketing channel for us.
Hmm.
But again, I think what's important is my ideal mix would be one third paid, one third organic, and one third direct. So I think we're not all the way there, but we're trying to get pretty close to there. I think if you have too much dependence on paid marketing, it's not a good thing, and it's not defensible in the long run as well.
Yeah. Great point. In terms of technology, is everything homegrown at Oversea?
Yep. Yeah, we've got a full in-house team, and that's one part of the airport parking that we haven't touched upon is we built. So we really have two types of business that we're going after here is the consumer business, which we've spent a lot of time talking about, and we've built that site, pretty much from scratch. Both taking parts from About Airport Parking in terms of the back end technology and putting a new kind of interface and bells and whistles on it. But what we've done over the last year as well is say not only is the consumer business where we think there's an opportunity, but there's an opportunity on the B2B side to white label or to expose our technology through an API.
Mm.
And that's really another big focus of ours is, without going into names, we are working with airlines and direct, large airlines and direct reservation systems to, be their airport parking provider. So that if you eventually, later this year, I wouldn't be surprised to go to an airline's page and you see, they can book airport parking on that, but that's powered by us. So we're exposing our API, whether it's on their site or whether it's through their post-booking emails or check-in emails. It's a goal of ours to be like, we want to serve not only the end user, but provide a technology solution. And we're able to get, in the door by like, hey, we're airportparking.com. Like you said, well, okay, that really gets to the point of what we're trying to sell, airportparking.com, and backed by a big company like Oversea, is helping us, make some traction with a lot of these airlines and travel reservations.
Yeah, no, that's a great added benefit. If I'm going to AlaskaAir.com and I'm booking my flight, I don't need a hotel because I've got that through my conference or something. But if you pop up there, hey, do you want to reserve a spot for your car? I'm like, yeah, that's take two birds with one stone right there in that process. I don't have to start a secondary process.
Yep, we see that as a kind of a growing up. in the travel space right now, what's huge is ancillary revenue. And, airport parking, like, luggage fees were before it, is one of the kind of, untapped resources still that people are like, okay, how can we leverage this for our users? And so we just want to make sure that we have the technology in an easy to consume form that,
Right.
whether it's an airline or a, hotel chain or whatever can do that, and we're able to offer that to them. And again, we can then leverage the reach that they have to expose our product to more users.
Hey, Raj, I've worked at large corporations in the past, and one of the problems in working in technology or digital media at large corporations like GE or Citigroup, where I've worked, is that you're always wrestling for resources. The IT group is its own form unto itself with its own leader, and you're prioritizing your work above other groups that are trying to get access to this small group of IT professionals. Do you face that at Oversea where you have to wrestle for resources, or do you have your own dedicated team?
Yeah, thankfully not. Oversea's been very, very good. Both our CEO and our CTO in terms of making sure that each of the businesses are run kind of independently and have their own dedicated resources. So yeah, here in travel we have a dedicated product team, a dedicated sales team, a dedicated tech team, and we are prioritizing travel projects. And so we're not really running into, of course, like everyone else, I want to do things faster and get more stuff done, but it's not a, prioritizing issue in terms of fighting for resources. It's, we've got people who've been here who've worked in travel for a while and have worked in the e-commerce space, and they're dedicated to, for example, there's dedicated engineers who are working on airport parking, and there's dedicated engineers working on other sites as well.
Nice. So you've got multiple engineers that are working on the information technology parts of airport parking and online travel?
Yes, definitely. We've got,
and then you've got another 5 to 8 customer service. You probably have somebody doing marketing, 1 or 2 people doing marketing.
Yeah, we've got, overall in the travel group, across all our 5 properties or so, we've got, between 20 and 30 people, and they're spread between, like you said, tech, and that's, sorry, not including customer service reps, so probably even more. Tech, product, sales, marketing, and, we've also got content or editorial staff as well that supplement some of the freelancers that we use. So it's pretty much all in-house. We really don't go, we go outside, very rarely, but it's pretty much, we try to build up the expertise in-house and try not to really outsource any of that. Especially now we're trying to build a lot more with mobile, especially with parking. We think we're probably, one of the only parking players that are integrated with Apple's iPhone 5, and we want to make a big push to get ahead of the curve there, and I think part of that goes with building up that talent in-house as opposed to kind of outsourcing it.
Yeah, nice. Raj, your picture has frozen. Is it frozen for? Is my picture? Okay, we just unfroze. Excellent. We're going to continue going. All right. Okay. So we talked about Google and how they make sure that that they're not seeing duplicate content. We talked about your customer service. I didn't realize that you had so many customer service people. Do you know what your capacity is on your customer service team? Are they on the phone constantly throughout the day because you have so many people calling in with reservation inquiries or customer service issues? I didn't realize that you had so many. I
mean, I think like you said, we vary depending on the seasonality, but between 5 and 8. But yeah, we're pretty busy. We work every day, pretty much of the week, except, maybe half days that we're not working. But yeah, we're pretty much always at between 80% to 100% of capacity in terms of taking calls, thousands of calls, a week or so.
Wow.
And we're, so we get a fair bit of volume in terms of visits and people calling in. One of the things is with airport parking, it especially, as people are doing more on their mobile, they may not be booking on their mobile, but click to call is very huge. Yeah. And click to call has been very effective for us as well. So, you're on the go, you're searching, you're like, I don't want to go and book anything on mobile, but I just want to make a reservation. So, we get a fair bit of phone calls of people on the go, or trying to look up stuff on their mobile. And I think, like we talked about, it's not just parking, but in general, travel. There's becoming more familiarity and more pervasiveness of people booking on their mobile phones, but it's still not for everybody, and there's still a fairly high look to book ratio compared to desktop. Where you may be in travel. If you get 25% of your visit or 50% of your visits on desktop, you get 50% of your bookings on desktop. While on mobile, it's like, hey, you might get 20% of your visits, but only 5% of your bookings.
Right.
And so how can we right channel that from, hey, we don't want to lose those customers. So let's if we can convert them, let's convert them on the phone. And once we get someone on the phone, our conversion rates are very high.
Yeah. All right, Raj, here's the last question. If I go to Travelocity or any of those sites,
Yes.
they splash up these banners, save up to 70%, 80%, 100%. It's crazy how they promote these things. So
Yep.
I went to airportparking.com and it said, and I don't have the text in my notes here, but it said something like save up to 70% or save 70% or something.
Yep.
So here's my question. If I'm a lot owner and I'm hiring you and paying you based on, commission to sell a certain number of my spots, why would I want to give you a lower price point to sell my spots? Isn't that why I'm paying you the commission?
Yeah, so I think what we do is we do work with lots on, again, I think for them, there's a combination of getting a higher conversion rate and being, realizing that, when they're on our site, they're competing against other lots, as opposed to when they're potentially on their own site or on their own property, it's, people are just looking at their site. So understanding that similarly to how, airlines on, Travelocity or wherever might have a different price than sometimes than on the airline site, there may need to be some sort of discounting in order to stand out there. But one thing we take pride in as well is that when we're saying that 70% and 60% off, it's also based on the fact that if you go to some other sites and we do benchmarking, we don't in general, we do in some cases, but in most cases, we don't charge like a booking fee or something like that. But if you go to some of our competitors, we do. So we're able to then, pass that savings on to the customer, but not take the margin out of the lot's hands.
Right.
And so we make that decision on our end to say, hey, we're not going to charge this fee or wherever, because we think that when you go and check our price for this lot, it's $16 here, but by the time you go to another site, you may get it for $19 a day. And that's really just something that we made a conscious decision on, not to try to go everywhere with booking fees. There are some cases where there are fees that are passed on to us that we'll have those, but overall, we're being very careful on how we do that. And if we do that, it's much less than what other sites have. And so our price point can be a little bit low.
Yep, that makes sense. Raj, if this has been a great overview of everything that's going on at Oversea in the airport parking business, if somebody wants to reach out to you and say, thank you for coming on the show and sharing so openly a lot of your strategies and tactics for airport parking, what's the best way that they can contact you?
I think it's probably email. I'm always on email, less so on phone. So, you could shoot me an email at rberi, so that's my last name, RBERI @oversea.net. And, I check that thing, when I'm every waking hour before I go to bed, to my wife's chagrin, and when I wake up first thing in the morning. So that's definitely the best way to reach out. And, I'd love to hear from your audience and others, and, whether it's just asking about the industry or, if they think of, cool ways that we could partner together or I could help them. This has been great.
Excellent. Raj Beri, General Manager of the Online Travel Division at Oversea. Thanks for coming on the show, and thanks for being a Domain Sherpa.
Thanks for having me on. Talk to you soon.
Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.